Welcome to the Rise Inside podcast, hosted by Justin Starbird and powered by RISE Robotics. Listen as host Justin talks to experts from the RISE team about topics relating to mechanical engineering, industrial design, commercialization, and innovation. True collaborations work when ideas are integrated at inception to solve significant problems. Rise Inside brings together how the team continues to work with great folks to commercialize ideas. You're listening to the Rise Inside podcast. Here's your host, Justin Starbird.
Welcome back to Rise Inside. My name is Justin Starbird, and this afternoon I am delighted to reintroduce Ken Gray, Director of Business Development for RISE. Ken, welcome back.
Thanks. Always nice to talk to you, my friend. Nice to be back.
Oh, likewise. Today's kind of cool, though, because we get to talk about you, and it's just you and I today instead of you and I interviewing some other folks. So this is kind of neat.
Well, what they say, no one loves the sound of his own voice more than Ken Gray. So that's, right down my alley. I'm happy to talk about me.
I'm sure that's exactly how the quote goes. So
it is. And we're basking in the glow today at RISE. We'll announce it here shortly, but we won a significant contract. In fact, our most significant contract to date as a company, just about 1:00 Eastern time today. So we'll get an announcement out about that. We'll be able to talk about it in the open. Can't quite do that yet, but we're all taking a moment to celebrate a success that we've worked for a very long time.
Well, there's nothing like a good cliffhanger for our next call then, right?
Yeah, there's your marketing teaser for this episode.
That's right. And for our next episode, when hopefully we get to invite everybody on to talk about that win. That'll be very exciting.
Yeah, that'd be really fun. We'll bring our partners in and talk about how we were selected and why and what we're going to do together. It would be great.
Absolutely. Well, in the meantime, it was moments like this that brought you out of retirement, right? I mean, you and I met in a previous life doing other projects, and I've been so fortunate to work together with RISE and growing not just the RISE brand, but also the business itself. But truly, this is what you had envisioned as well when you came out of retirement. No?
It is. And in fact, there's a little known fact that one of my favorite business photographs was actually taken by you. And it's me and Astro Teller standing on the red carpet in New York City. So we've worked with some incredibly innovative people and companies over the years. And this is fun. And I have a lot of people ask me, I've been retired, whatever that word means, from Caterpillar 6 years ago. Gosh, time flies when you're having fun. Yeah. And worked on a family project, as you know, and spent some time away. I took a year of sabbatical, and at my wife's request, and had a fantastic time. And then she kicked me out of the house and back to find something to do. And the guys at RISE, the team at RISE has been after me for some time to come work with them on this technology, and it is really interesting. It has the potential of significantly reducing power consumed by heavy industrial equipment, which is what I spent my whole career working on, and solve some of the problems, or at least has the potential to solve many of the problems that we were unable to solve with conventional means of delivering power, typically hydraulically, in the products that I've worked on.
Right. So, let's jump right into that. What is RISE? This is part of the Founders Series, and I know although you weren't part of the founding group, you were one of their first managerial or director hires to come on and steer the company. But before we get into your role, tell me a little bit about RISE.
So RISE was founded by 3 MIT and 1 Rhode Island School of Design graduates. Some of these guys are identified by Forbes as 30 under 30 quality individuals. So the two founders, Aaron Acosta, CEO, and Blake Sessions, our CTO, were identified that way, and they're, everybody's young to me now, Justin, right? So they're still very young men in their early mid 30s, but that's the caliber of talent that this leadership team has. And then Tomas Sepp, who I think of is in the chief engineer kind of role. He manages the engineering resources, leads the engineering resources. He told me today that he doesn't have time to be an individual contributor anymore, which just means that his load of leading and managing is full, and he's realized how much time people development takes.
Yep.
And then the fourth one is Kyle Delaquella, who is Rhode Island School of Design, and Kyle's one of these rare left brain, right brain people that is as strong of as an artist as he is an engineer. He's just a remarkable talent, and it's that probably those four people were what drew me in the first place. And then this technology that they have developed that is based on really moving loads with steel reinforced polyurethane belts on pulleys sounds pretty basic, and it is fundamentally simple technology. It's the implementation that's not so simple. That because it's rolling contact and it has such incredibly high weight power density, incredibly high, that it has application in these industrial applications, and it can dramatically reduce, again, because of rolling contact, it can dramatically reduce power consumption. And oftentimes we're seeing reductions in actuation power consumed. I mean, empirical data on the order of 65 to 90%,
right,
which is amazing. Whether you're interested in electrifying a machine, or whether you're just interested in burning a whole lot less fuel, whatever the power source is, this technology will help you use a whole lot less of it. And for me, as a construction equipment mining machine developer and director for my whole career, my career was full of looking for opportunities to reduce owning and operating costs, find ways to reduce fuel burn, overall cost of machines. This technology offers potential to advance in those areas in ways we've never thought possible, at least not in my career.
Absolutely. Well, and it's that story that you've been charged with, basically telling, right? So, what has your role, evolved into since coming on board?
Yeah, we're small. We're still on the order of 30 people. Mostly engineers, and then we work with others to help us on the marketing sales side of things, but we're primarily a technical company. In fact, one could argue that we're a technology company beginning the transition toward it being a product company, and my role in it by title is Vice President of Business Development. But when you have 30 people, I mean, you do all kinds of things on a leadership team. I'm as involved in, product development and strategy and finance as I am in business development. But what I think primarily what I do is I introduce RISE technology to industrial leaders who I think have an opportunity to improve their product with this technology. And then, so I am often involved with laying out what the technology is, listening to them about what their needs are, and determining whether or not there is a marriage possible here. And I told someone today that we're a small company. This technology is fantastic. It has great potential. We're not saying it's going to work on everything. So what I get involved in quite often is assessing whether or not there's potential. And if there's not, we're going to move on. The opportunity costs are just too high. So we can't spend time, we can't spend time trying to force our technology into an application. We're spending time identifying the most suitable applications, and then our next step is to apply our technical expertise to make it happen for people that want to work with us, who are our early adopters at this point.
Absolutely. And you touched on a couple of things there. One, I just hear the passion that comes out. I mean, I would never classify you as an introvert, having known you now for 10
Well,
plus years.
I am an all-in kind of person, right? I mean, and people that know me know that I'm all in. I'm either all in or I'm not interested,
Right.
right? That's just the way it is. And it's easy to be passionate when you're working with people who have very similar interests. I mean, I love machines. I'm educated as a mechanical engineer. I love cool new designs but I'm not a technology for technology's sake person. I'm looking for, I've always looked for ways to improve the performance of machines, make them more reliable, reduce their cost. That's what I'm passionate about, because historically that's what the customers that my businesses have served well have been passionate about. And we talk about at Rise being the Willy Wonka chocolate factory of machine design, because the joy that how do I say this? There's one of our slogans that you see is the joy of building better machines, and that's really what this team is fired up about. And I love that. I there's a story that I came home from second grade and told my mom I was going to be a mechanical engineer. I have no idea. I didn't have an idea of what a mechanical engineer was when I was a senior in high school, so I know I didn't know what it was in second grade. But the idea that mom often talked about was that machines were what I was interested in. And so my whole career has been the 5-year-old or the 7-year-old in that case, in the sandbox. I never left the sandbox, never want to, never will.
Well, what was it's easy to talk about now. You've been involved for quite some time, relative to the length the company's been in existence in its current form. But what was what actually pulled you out of retirement and said, okay, this is what I want? Because you got to meet them a couple of times, but I mean, you couldn't have known how in depth and how talented these guys were right out of the gate, could you?
No. In fact, it was over several years. Aaron, our CEO, reached out to me. I don't know, it must have been 4 years ago. Wanted me to come to Somerville, near MIT there, visit the lab, because they had this great actuator that did all these great things. And I reviewed it from a distance, Justin. I didn't go. I looked at video, looked at the technology, and I didn't think 4 years ago that they were ready. They had the theory was great. The design concept was great. The advantages were clear, especially around power consumption. What I didn't realize, there's some other things we can talk about too. And then Aaron reached out probably 2 years later and, hey, are we ready yet? and then a year after that, then they had some things that were real to show me, some real actuators, some things that were packaged to a point where I thought that you could really put them on in an industrial application. And that got me interested. And then I think a conversation with Blake Sessions and Tomas Sepp and Kyle Delaquella, talking with all those guys. Probably the one that impressed me the most was speaking with Blake. I don't mean to take anything away from any of them, but Blake, I've said this, used this phrase before, is represents to me the intersection of elegant mathematics and practical applications. And he is, as I'd put Blake Sessions, I'd put this whole team up against any engineering problem that I've encountered in my nearly 40-year career. How's that possible? Nearly 40-year career. And I don't care what it is. I don't care what the problem is. They would solve it. And Blake, if you speak with, and Blake, you need to shut this off if you listen to this for about a minute here. but Blake is regarded as a generational talent at MIT. In fact, one of the professors says that he is the finest mechanical engineer that they have produced in a generation.
Mm-hmm.
And if you work with him for a short period of time, you realize that that is true. It's amazing. So we all kind of think of ourselves as disciples, but I think that they really dig into why things work the way they do. And my dad was always a big proponent of, you don't understand it until you can explain why it does what it does, how it works. And this team is very much into figuring out how things work the way they do. And they RISE cylinder, the concept is, there are two ways. I've said this to you before, Justin. There are two ways to destroy a belt that's under load. And RISE cylinder works because it does both of those things at the same time, and
Right.
it is, and applied in such a way that it is though neither of those things is happening.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the intersection of elegant mathematics and practical applications. And just to be clear, you can't twist a belt without reducing its life, and you can't fleet it, which means you can't bend it on an axis that's perpendicular to the plane of the belt. So
Sure.
think about keeping that belt flat on a plane. You buckle the inside race and you stretch the outside race. But if you do both of those things at the same time in the right ratio, it is, as I said before, it is as though neither of those two things is occurring. It is as though it is neither fleeted nor twisted. Pardon my butchering of the English language there. but that to me was, that understanding, that need to understand why, that passion for better machines combined with the theory and the concept had turned into a real design and a real product is what brought me kind of back out of the shadows and into because I just never really wanted to completely stop working. And oh my gosh, if these guys put an end to that fishing every day
Right.
dream that I thought I had. And I think one of the secrets to longevity is meaningful work. This team is man, they are definitely helping keep me young. So it's a lot of fun.
Well, we also have the advantage of doing this interview after hearing Blake, Tomas, Kyle, Aaron all speak as well, and we've actually had some of the other partners and investors in RISE participate. So I've heard a lot of different reasons why the vision of RISE is so important, and you're talking here a lot about the passion and what brought you out of I would say a slowed down, work-life balance, and instead of retirement. I don't think I've ever known you to be quote in retirement. You just had other projects that weren't a previous 9-to-5 type of job. But with that said, you're in a unique position because you had a career before. And you had a lot of these relationships. I know you never vouched for anything that you didn't feel, like you had said before, you're all in or you're not interested. So, now you're vouching for something that is potentially going to change the landscape of an industry that you spent your entire life in. What to you has made this vision so important? And what is that going to mean in both the commercial and also, we were talking about some of the other projects that you're starting to get traction in the government space. What really resonates with folks as you talk to them all day about RISE?
Well, that's a great question. Let me try to answer it this way. Let's start on the Air Force side first, on the DoD side first. The U.S. Air Force is the world's single largest consumer of fossil fuels. Let that soak in for a minute. And it isn't even close. And one of the projects that really excited us this year was to be honored to be invited to help them look at their ground fleet to reduce the energy consumption of that ground fleet. And that has been a fascinating project. And so one of the potentials of RISE technology, and I don't care whether we electrify that fleet or not, as I said earlier, whatever fuel you use, we can help you use less of it. When you're using 65 to 90% less energy to actuate, instead of using a hydraulic compared to a hydraulic cylinder, these high power applications use significantly less fuel. So we can reduce the fuel used in many of these applications by nearly half. And that's number one. So we can reduce that, the fuel that's actually used on the ground significantly. What's perhaps more important is that equipment that supports aircraft on the ground is transported by air when it's deployed for military purposes, right? Mm-hmm. And the cost, or the fossil fuel burned, the jet fuel burned to move a pound of material is enormous. And there's a job that we've done for one of the branches of the Air Force, one of the commands of the Air Force, where we redesigned a crane that they deploy. And we took the weight of that crane from 1,760 pounds, I believe, down to just over 200 pounds to do the same work. So the original crane was hydraulic. The crane they wanted was manually powered, so it's literally like a hand crank to get this done. So, but what's really important there is that we dramatically reduce the jet fuel used to get that device from one place to another. So one of the things that we're really excited about in that space is improving, how much fuel they use, reducing that fuel consumption, but also we're solving some of their biggest problems and operational problems in terms of making the equipment much more suitable to the task, much more controllable, will allow fewer warfighters to be able to do the job that was previously done by multiple warfighters, might be done by half as many people. Those are the types of operational improvements we're looking at as well. So it's that combination on the defense side of reducing fossil fuel, but also significantly improving the operational capabilities their operational capabilities. On the commercial side, as I said, I always thought of the way I wanted products on the commercial side. There's a meeting I'll never forget in my life where they were trying to get me. I wanted to design a green machine when I was when I had a certain job in my past, and they said, look, the way we think of it is like this. Number one, the machine has to perform well. If you can make a machine that performs and does the job better than any other machine has ever done it, then yeah, we'll start to pay attention. But that performing machine has to do the job incredibly reliably. The most important ability is availability. So when I go to turn the key on, it's I don't care how good the machine performs when it's running. If it's not running, it's no good to me. So you better make sure that it's very, very reliable as well. And then I need those two things, but I have a business to run. Mm-hmm. So, my owning and operating costs had better be low. They have to be low. So I can't afford to pay anything up front. And I don't want to keep pouring fuel in it, and I don't want to pour oil into it, and et cetera. And then the next level is, we got to meet regulations, right? We've got to be safe. We've got to be quiet. We've got to be in the list. The list is on and on. It has to be transportable, and on and on. And then the last one is, I'd like to think this one was first, but it usually isn't. Well, it isn't, because we have businesses to run. We all breathe the same air and drink the same water. Mm-hmm. And so for me, RISE is super important, because we're going to tremendously reduce greenhouse gases in industrial applications, because we're going to be burning so much less fuel to move loads, and where it's a completely dry solution. There are no hydraulic fluids here at all. And then I mentioned earlier some other benefits. Because it's based on rolling contact, there's very little heat signature. So these are all passively cooled devices, or generally passively cooled devices. There are a few exceptions, but the cooling system that was previously devoted to hydraulics can also come out. So there are no reservoirs, there are no tanks, there are no pumps, there are no hoses, lines, tubes, there are no seals, there are no leaks. So we're doing two things. We're dramatically reducing greenhouse gas, and we're eliminating the potential of contamination of fluids into the environment, because there just aren't any.
Yeah.
So to me, I can provide product that customers want to buy, and it's much more friendly in the environment. The electrification mega trend is important in transportation, particularly automobiles, and now on highway trucks. It's coming in industrial equipment, and RISE technology is an enabling technology. That's why I'm so excited about it. It could fit into everything.
So, I sit here and I listen to you, and I mean, it never gets old to be able to tell this story. And that's why, I'm here, right? Is being able to have this podcast and be able to help share, the successes of RISE. But there are still obstacles. And, as passionately as you share that, you still have, doubters out there. Can you talk and touch on a little bit of, the challenges that RISE is still facing to get the technology adopted?
Absolutely. I mean, we need to be very transparent and want to be very transparent about this. I mean, not every mechanical engineer that works for an industrial company is from Missouri, but they sure need to be shown that the technology works. And the more that we demonstrate that it works, the more people will align with us. However, we're industrial, machines are married to hydraulics, and rightly so, because hydraulics, mass power density is incredible. In fact, hydraulics displaced cables and pulleys, over 75 years ago in construction and mining equipment, because the power density is so good. It's generally reliable. It's something people understand. It's ingrained into the business. It's big companies that make this equipment very often have their own hydraulics businesses. And so our competitors you could think of RISE's competitors as being hydraulics or hydraulic cylinder manufacturers. But to me, our competition is, reticence to change and not invented here thinking. And we've always done it this way. And oh my gosh, there's a lot of change we're going to have to make. It's resistance. They are resistance to change issues, Justin, far more than they are technical or competitive issues. Now,
right.
That's the first category. The second category is that from a mass power density point of view, RISE is clearly superior to hydraulics. Clearly, will be lighter, no question about it. From a volumetric power density point of view, we're not always going to be the same size. We're going to be, in the case of our partner Anthony Liftgates, our cylinder is the same as we can fit in the same space claim as the hydraulic cylinders we replaced. But in many cases, it will be somewhat larger, and the diameter might be 60% larger, depending on a lot of things, duty cycle, operating pressure, etc. And so you can't always just drop it in and plug and play. So there's some legitimate reasons for pushback because there will be some system redesign required, and that's costly. I mean, and I get it.
But on that end, though, sorry to interrupt, but
No, please.
To that end, companies have a responsibility at some point to move towards being more efficient, to being more sustainable, and those sorts of things. So if they're not already thinking about a redesign of their current, platform, their current operating system, whatever, I mean, wouldn't this fall into that same budget? And if they would look for the best partner for each requirement that they have in order to meet that, no?
Yes and no. They are certainly cognizant of the electrification megatrend that's going on in the world. They know that their customers more and more are asking for reduced greenhouse gas emissions. There's not as much clamor for, groundwater, eliminating groundwater contamination potential, but it's coming. That said, radical redesign of a system is really expensive, and not, there's an upfront development cost. But I've often thought that the most successful industrial equipment customers are the ones that know their costs extraordinarily well. And if you change the fundamental design of a machine, then there's a chance that there's a risk in that giving them something new, even something better. Not everyone has the appetite for that. Now, yeah. I mean, if I'm gonna dig a basement, it's really super important that I know exactly what it's going to cost. Mm-hmm. And especially if I have to spend more money up front to get that asset, I might just not be able to do it. It sure. Doesn't matter how much more efficient I want to be. So there's some economy of scale that has to happen. There's a bit of a catch-22 or a chicken and the egg here. I mean, I don't know how many. I probably could tell you exactly how many hydraulic cylinders we're making worldwide, but it's millions.
Yeah.
And so RISE cylinder doesn't have economy of scale to match up with that cost. There's no reason to think that in the long term that we won't have that kind of cost level, that kind of cost advantage. But right now, as an emerging technology on an actuator to actuator basis against hydraulics, we're more expensive. Yep. At a system level, we can match up really well, but you have to be able to rip out all those things I talked about earlier, fluid, reservoir, valve, pumps, all that stuff. Yeah. If you can take all that out, we're generally very competitive. But again, that's a pretty dramatic change in the system. And remember, this is so ingrained. I mean, you've got, think about the internal combustion engine and how it's embedded in the automotive business. I mean, hydraulics in a very similar way is embedded in the industrial machinery business. I mean, mm-hmm. Everything is built around that technology. And that said, what is fascinating to me right now is the most interested collaborators we have seem to be hydraulics companies. Because it's really interesting because they've recognized the megatrend, number one, and number two, those that think of themselves as providers of actuation or providers of power, or companies that transfer power, deliver force. If they think of themselves in that way, as opposed to a hydraulics company, which many of them do, by the way, think of themselves as, we do actuation or we do, we're in the power business or the energy business. If they think of themselves that way, then they talk to us much sooner than those who don't, if that makes sense.
Well, let me ask you now then. I mean, I've heard how excited you are, heard how you're dealing with some of these challenges. What's next for RISE? What's next for, the business development side of the business?
Well, we've got, like I start where we started this off. We've got a great deal that we'll get a press release out on that we're super excited about. We have I really think of it as two channels. We have a DoD channel, Department of Defense channel, and we have a commercial channel. We've got a lot of activity going on in DoD, and so I expect more and more of that as we gain more traction. And we're participating in a program that Army Research Lab hosts called X-Tech Search. And we're involved in that for two reasons, because we've had some success with the Air Force, but X-Tech Search is a program that we were part 1 winners, part 2 winners. Now we're into part 3, kind of as we go down the funnel, through the funnel. But we're participating there because we want to understand the needs of U.S. Army, and we want U.S. Army to understand RISE technology as an enabler to improve operations of on the U.S. Army side. So I think that a lot's going to happen there. On the commercial side, we have a number of budding partnerships that are in various stages of development. We'll be talking about the Anthony Liftgates one that we announced back in October is moving along well, and we're planning a launch of the all-electric liftgate in the spring, which we're very excited about. That's probably our next big step, and then we'll be talking about more and more commercial partners going forward. We have a lot of projects underway that I would love to talk about, but would be in serious trouble if I did.
Right. No, I understand. Well,
and we continue to grow, Justin. I mean, we're adding to this team. We're building out an application engineering team. We've added 3 people there. We're going to add a 4th one here shortly. The engineering team that's working on the actuator development is growing. We have added a CFO that we're about ready to announce here, and very shortly, another shall we say, seasoned veteran of industry that we'll be talking about. You'll get to interview shortly, I hope. And then manufacturing capabilities are growing as well. We're going to be talking about a director of manufacturing. We just brought in a director of our software development team, who I think we ought to line you up to talk to as well about his perspective and background, and what he brings to RISE, why he's here. Similar kind of conversation. So, in the last year, we've doubled the technical resources of this team as we did the year before, and I expect that growth rate to continue going forward.
Awesome. Well, Ken, it's been really great having you on again today. I'm looking forward to our next one, which is, I think we're gonna, turn the tide, and you might get a shot at me.
I'm looking forward to hosting a RISE Inside podcast. Maybe we should just leave that as the marketing teaser right there. What do you think?
I know we got so much here, so this is awesome.
You have been listening to the RISE Inside podcast, presented by RISE Robotics. On behalf of our guest today and host Justin Starbird, thank you for listening. Please share your feedback on our LinkedIn page, linkedin.com/company/RISE-robotics.